It is July 1st, 2013. This is John Dowsett conducting the interview with Albert Sheperd. This will be the 5th interview for the project.
Okay.
Mr. Sheperd?
I was born in Craig in June 9th, 1931.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly where I was born, but it's around Tucker Street, 400 block.
Okay.
Anyway, then when I was 6 months old, my parents moved to a house at 6th and Taylor, and it was on the northeast corner of the intersection. I and the big trees there are the same age, I think.
Okay.
Because I remember seeing pictures, we were the same height. They outgrew me. So anyway, across the street, you know, as a young child, I can remember, there was attorney George Pugh, was to the south. Catty corner to the east was Dr. Deal. The house to the east wasn't existing at that time. On the west side was a house by Abergaris's and Dr. Bailey, and then two houses on the catty corner across the street were both sheepmen, Lou Wyman and Norman Winder. Anyway, and on down around the neighborhood, we had other attorneys and cattlemen, and so it was quite a neighborhood.
Right.
There was a lot of kids born on and lived on Taylor Street. But the city limits was on Rennie, the middle of Rennie Street, which was 1 block to the west. Craig wasn't near as large at that time. We would play over on Rennie Street a lot because there was an irrigation ditch that ran right through the middle of it, and we as kids would quite often dam that ditch up and flood the street. But there was no gravel in the street, so it was just a mud lolly. Anyway, I had 3 older brothers. John is my next older brother. Robert was the next one, and Jim was the oldest brother. Jim and myself today are partners in the business of Sheperd and Sons, which we ended up buying from my father in 1964, I believe. And we're at this time selling the business to a new party. Anyway, this business is the oldest service business within the Yampa Valley that we can figure.
Okay.
And it's been a plumbing and heating, air conditioning business all these years. We have celebrated the 89th year in March.
Wow.
So anyway, my father started the business in 1924. But we'll go back farther than that. My grandfather, who was Lewis Showers, came into this country on a train at Rifle, Colorado. He ended up buying a wagon and a team and moved on up through Meeker, and he homesteaded south of Maybell, Colorado, in about 1908. I have located him in the census in 1910, and he was working at that time, must have been on Cross Mountain, because it says Cross Mountain Census is where they were located. So anyway, as I understand, and during the history of that, his homestead was just near the Keystone Ranch, and he got ran off his homestead because the cowboys of the Keystone Ranch rocked in as well, so he couldn't survive.
Right.
So then that's when I think he went to Cross Mountain and probably was doing some timbering at that time. In 1912, he ended up buying a lot in Sunbeam and built the first post office in Sunbeam. He became postmaster in October of 1912 at Sunbeam. My mother at that time was being raised in Kansas with her mother, and as a 14-year-old she decided to come to Colorado and live with her father. So she got on the train and came in 1915, and she came over Corona Pass at that time.
Oh, okay.
And I guess she spent some time on top of the pass because of the snow conditions. But anyway, she arrived here, and he picked her up, and he took her down to Maybell, and she lived in Maybell during the summer with the family called Bleckas. And that family eventually moved to Steamboat. But anyway, he had to get her up to Craig and allow her to attend high school. So they built a house down below the railroad tracks, and it was called a tar paper shack, which a lot of houses were done at that time. And it was a frame structure with tar paper all over it, and that basically waterproofed it.
Right.
So I read letters when she was in high school that she would send to her father in Sunbeam, and one particular letter she talked about that her boyfriend and her, after she got off work at the drugstore, had to go down across the tracks, and they noticed somebody in the shadows, and this was after dark. And so he finally left her at the house, and he says, "Are you going to be okay?" And she says, "Oh yes, I'll be all right." So anyway, she got to bed, and all of a sudden somebody threw rocks at the house. So she decided to get up and go after this party. So she got her clothes on and went over and climbed over a railroad car, over the box car, and she came down, and there was a guy by the name of Frank, and she accused him of doing it. Well, Frank said, "I didn't do it." Well, she says, "It will not happen again." And she finishes the letter off and saying, "My boyfriend loaned me his pistol. I know how to use it. I don't intend to kill anybody, just scare him to death." So this is the type era we were at that time.
Right.
Craig probably at that time, I don't think, was maybe 1,000 to 15 people.
Wow.
1,500 people.
Right.
So anyway, so then my father, who was born and raised in Warrensburg, Missouri, and his father was a newspaper editor there. My father was the black sheep of the family. He learned to be a plumber rather than a teacher like the rest of his brothers and sisters.
Right.
So anyway, he learned plumbing, and he made the statement that he did a plumbing job for Frank James, brother of Jesse James.
Wow.
So and he said he was very religious by that time. Anyway.
Jesse James?
Huh?
The Jesse James was religious?
No, Frank was.
Oh, okay.
Jesse was dead by then.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, then he moved on into Colby, Kansas with his cousin, Mabel Kaiser, and her husband. And so they worked at Colby, Kansas for a while, and he learned his sheet metal trade at that point.
Right.
In Kansas. Then they moved here in 1915. I think I've read letters where it took 4 trips with a Model T Ford. to carry all their items and move to Craig. So his cousin Mabel and her husband homesteaded out on the High Mesa area, which is near where the power plant is today.
Right.
And my father homestead out on County Road 19.
Okay.
That's 15 miles north of Maybell. We still have that homestead, and it's made a profit all these years. So anyway, it's paid the taxes.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how my father got here, and he started working for Kennedy Plumbing, and I'm not sure where it was located.
Right.
But I understand that some of his first jobs was building a sheet metal flume up here on Black Mountain. And then I understand when the administration building up here, which was our original grade school, he did the metal work on the outside, ornamental metal work,
right.
And it's still there today.
Wow.
Which is amazing to me.
And
so,
where is that in?
It's up here in the brick building about 2 blocks.
Oh,
north.
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, where the administration building is for the school.
Oh.
So anyway, then there must have been a boom, and I think it was an oil boom.
Okay. And what year?
About in the early 20s.
Early 20s. Oil.
Maybe 1924.
Okay.
Because my father went into business at that time.
For oil?
Well, no, he went into business as a plumber.
Oh, with this business.
With this business that we have today.
Okay.
All right. And I estimate that there had to be a boom, and it seems that every time we had a boom, his employees would separate from and create their own business.
Okay.
So it still goes on today that way. They get enough knowledge thinking they know how to do it. So over the period of years, we have taught many men the occupation of plumbing, sheet metal, and heating and air conditioning.
Right.
And it's still going on today. I've always proud of ourselves. I never kept track, but there's been a lot of kids educated through that business, going on to college, and so now. Back to me. Okay, my older brother James was born about 22. No, 23. Yeah. And then Brother Bob, 1925, John, 1928, and myself, 1931. And so our mother was pretty strict. They said I got away with murder, being the youngest. Right. But anyway, she probably started controlling everybody. So we all attended grade school at that same building, and we then went to high school on the Breeze building, which no longer exists.
Okay.
And I went through, at that time, I went from Craig High School to Moffett County High School while I was there. And then I attended high school at a new building, which is today the middle school. Okay. And it's gotten remodeled since then. But I graduated in 1950. And Craig Bobley at that time, 1950, I think we were running between 4,000 and 5,000 people. As a kid, I mowed lawns and took care of yards during the summer months. Okay. But in that same period of time, I usually went out to the Wyman Ranch, sheep ranch, and I'd work out there and play on it, because I started going out there when I was 6 years old.
Right.
But over the years, I learned to dock sheep, learned to herd sheep, and I learned to ship them, and
Right.
I learned a lot about the sheep business. Anyway, but I always had hay fever, so I never could stay around during the haying period.
Right.
I had to leave. So anyway, when I do that, I come back and I could tell when they were haying or thrashing, just
Right.
very simple.
Right.
And that was only happening 2 blocks away from the house. So, like I said, Randy Street was the city limits. Well, now, okay, I graduated in 1950, and there was a class of 42. Today, I guesstimate we've only lost 6 members out of that class. 9, I counted them.
Wow.
So, that's pretty good
Yeah.
in that age. So, anyway, so I graduated, and I didn't, I stayed home and worked for a year until my friend Louis Wyman, which was Lou Wyman's son. He graduated from a school in Kansas, a military school, so
Okay.
I and he went, that's proper English. He and I went to visit Colorado A&M College, which today is CSU.
Right.
And I got interested when he was there, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to go to college. So that fall, I registered with him,
Right.
and we were roommates.
That's cool.
At school, and then the next year, you had to live at the dorm the first year as a freshman, but the next year we lived off campus, and I remember the address was 1515 Peterson Street. And
That's good.
yeah, so anyway, but in this little basement apartment there was I, Lou Wyman, Neil McCandless, Joe Wilson, Carl Conway. There was 6 of us from Craig in that apartment. And then by mid-year, we had already lost 2. They decided to go to service.
Right.
And so then by the second year, we were down to 3 of us.
Wow.
So on it. And Wilson, myself, and McCandless, and then we got another kid in there to live with us. And then Neil got married, so there's just the 3 of us. And so anyway, I made it through my junior year, and I got married to a Fort Collins girl.
Okay.
And next thing I knew, I was being drafted into the Army. Well, in the meantime, I had belonged to the reserve unit at Fort Collins, so I already had a corporal rating because I'd been there.
Which branch? Which branch?
Army.
Army.
So anyway, it was kind of interesting. We had a woman who was head of the draft department here, secretary, and she always claimed she had never missed her man. Well, it had to be my commanding officer in the reserve was the head of the Colorado draft. So he says, she makes that claim, we're going to set her up. He says, I'm going to cut orders, and your order will be 1 hour before your draft orders. So you have to take the order that's the sooner time.
Right.
So I went into service through the reserves, and next thing I knew that my dad was calling me that I was AWOL from the draft. and I said, well, don't tell her anything, where I am or anything. But I was already in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Wow.
So anyway, finally 2 two guys, government guys, and I had no idea who they were, showed up, and they were asking my commanding officer, myself, how long I'd been there. Well, I've been there the same date I went AWOL, you know.
Right.
Yeah. They called her every name. Anyway, so when she got set up, I never had enough gumption to tell her that she had been set up.
Right. That's a good story.
Yeah. So anyway, and afterwards I worked for him because after I got out of service, I had went into service. I took my basic Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Then I was sent to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and I went to the longest school the Army had, which is field radio repair. And so I was there in Georgia for a whole year on that, and my wife was with me a little bit during that period. And then I was sent to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And Fort Huachuca, Arizona was the electronic proving ground, and I think it is still today, of the Army.
That's interesting.
You know. So anyway, and when I went to Fort Huachuca, our responsibility, we had a mission, and it was to prove why equipment didn't work in Korea, because this was the latter part of Korea. And so, I had a commanding officer by the name of Lieutenant Sheperd. Anyway, I got talking to Lieutenant Sheperd one day, and he says, I had a guy from Colorado. He says, Craig, Colorado, that was my company clerk. I said, what was his first name? He said, John. I said, well, that was my brother John. And he says, there was two other guys from Craig, Colorado. And I said, yeah, there was. One was Paul Talkinen, or was it Talkinen? One was Thompson, Charlie Thompson. And I said, I knew they were there. And he says, yeah, he says, Thompson, he says, he volunteered for every night duty, you know, going out on patrol. He says he was a crazy nut. I says, well, it's very interesting because his brother is in the next company to us right now. And he made the statement, he's what a small world. But anyway, while I was there, we had to send our men. I became a platoon sergeant, and I had to send guys off to an operation called Sagebrush. And it was in Louisiana, which didn't make much sense. So anyway, so I kept doing that, but we had to continue to do our mission and everything. What we really found out, that those transmitters didn't hold up when you dropped them out of a truck. That's the only thing we ever found out what was the matter with them. So anyway, so then I was transferred to Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver. And so I became they didn't have any job for a radio operator or a radio repairman, so they gave me the job of permanent CQ. That means charge of quarters. So anybody that entered the post, their orders came through me first, and then I had to send them where they needed to go. This was not only male personnel, it was female personnel. So the wax came through our duty too. So anyway, that was quite an interesting. I was there approximately 6 months, and in the meantime, my wife had decided she wanted to be divorced, so we were going that. She moved to California and stopped in Vegas and got a divorce. I mean, that can happen. Now, so anyway, then I came back to Craig after I got out of service. Dad was short-handed. And at that time, my brother John was down at Colorado Springs during the construction of the Air Force Academy And I think at that time he was in construction of INT, the Air Defense Command.
Okay.
And so he worked for Mountain Bell at that time. And so he was in charge of that, direct communications with General LeMay. You've heard of LeMay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he communicated directly with him about all this stuff, so.
Wow.
So that's Brother John, and he wanted me to come down there and join into that, and I could have, but Dad was shorthanded, so I came back to work.
Right.
And I've been working ever since.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, but Craig was starting into a boom period then.
Okay.
And this was in the late 50s, early 60s. And that was a uranium boom.
The uranium?
So at that time, there was quite a construction of new homes happening at that time.
Right.
And so the city limits kind of moved from Ranny Street, they moved west to Green Stout Street. Okay. So it moved about that far. And there was probably 100 homes built in a subdivision there.
Right.
We had Sunset Elementary built, Congregational Church in that area, another church. So there was quite a few buildings, and it was very active.
Right.
In Craig. We had a paving project in Craig, and all the streets got paved, and I think that would have been about 1957, 58.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of the streets were paved?
Yeah. Pretty near I'd say 90% of the streets were paved at that time. So my job at that time was renewing old water surface lines ahead of the paving, or the road construction crew. So curbs and gutters were being put in and all that. So.
And how did you notice Craig changing? Aside, I guess the people of Craig is what I'm asking. Aside from the physical features of Craig. Or did you?
Well, yes, I did, and I'm thinking about the Lions Club at that time was a very active organization.
Okay.
It probably had I'd say 30 members at that.
Oh wow.
30 to 40 members on it. My father was in the Lions Club, and then I'm thinking about that same period. In the 60s, the Lions Club here was primarily the chamber, was up to that point. The Lions Club, if you go back in the history of it, they were actually the Chamber of Commerce of Craig.
Oh, okay.
They did a lot of activities, and they bring business people from Denver would come on the train and be entertained, and it was selling Craig as a good spot to live and stuff, businesses. So the Lions Club then was very active. My father and all the major businessmen belonged to the Lions Club at that time.
All major businessmen?
Yeah. And so did the same people, other people belonged to the Masonic organization.
Yep.
Right? And the Eastern Star. My parents were quite involved with American Legion, Eastern Star, and Masonic organization, and the Lions Club. So they were very much involved there.
So your father was a Mason?
Yes. And so are my brothers. All are
if
Masons.
You don't mind me asking, are you a Mason?
No, I am not.
Okay, just wondering.
But I was a Demolay.
Okay.
And I did not like ritual work.
Right, okay.
So, anyway, in fact, I became a state officer in the Demolay.
Oh, okay.
I was chaplain in the state office.
Wow, okay.
When I was 16, I think it was. And so, but I just didn't really care for it.
Right.
But I did like Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout. I was always in the leader position.
Right.
Always. I was in the Boy Scouts. I became a leader there. I became a Cub Scouts leader, and things. I always got put in that position, and it's still today. So anyway, during that period, there was a ruling in the Lions Club. Let's see, I'm 60. I've got in there 50, 69. In the 60s, there was a ruling that sons couldn't join the Lions Club if their father was in the Lions.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know why that is?
I don't know where but Lions kind of had a deal, only one member out of an occupation could belong to the club.
Right.
See, they had that kind of ruling. Well, prior to that, I did join the Kiwanis Club. And it had gotten started. Basically, it got started by those sons that couldn't join the Lions Club.
Okay.
The same ones, see. So, anyway, I was a Kiwanian for 4 years.
Okay.
And the JCs got started in the early 60s.
Okay.
And I became very much involved at that. And you stayed there until you're supposed to got done at 36. I think I went until 40 years of age. But I went to international conventions with the JCs and state conventions. It was a good time. And a lot of young men did a lot of things here.
Right.
That people would say, oh, it couldn't be done. We didn't know it couldn't be done.
Right.
We did it.
Right.
So, anyway, one of the things was very interesting was we found out there in Yellowstone National Park they were killing elk up there because of overabundance of elk.
Right.
And so Udall, I think, was head of the in the United States, the Park Service or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But he was in. Anyway, we ended up and fought that. We got the elk hunting or shooting stopped. But here we have abundance of elk. So the Craig JCs here decided, well, we'll transport them where they don't have any elk. So we found out this was happening right in our own state. We couldn't get them out of Wyoming because we couldn't transport them across the border because scabies.
Oh, right.
So we found out it was happening in Rocky Mountain National Park. So we ended up getting 15 head of elk out of there and transported. People said it couldn't be done. Well, we did it.
Right.
That herd got planted out here in the Danford Hills, and I know that herd is over 4,000 elk or something. Big herd out of that.
So you guys brought the elk population here?
Yeah.
And what club was that a part of, or just
that was
the young men?
The JC.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay.
Well, finally you get too old, you can't be in the JC, so you have to. So anyway, my father finally passed away in 67, I think it was.
Right.
And so anyway, I finally dropped myself out of Kiwanis Club, and I got asked to go into the Lions Club. Now I'm at 40, I think I've been in the Lions Club 43 years.
Wow.
40-something.
Okay.
And since 1969, and I immediately became the secretary.
Okay.
Well, I hate to say the ruling about sons, it just disappeared. I couldn't find it. There was I couldn't find a ruling on that, so
Right.
it disappeared.
Yep.
Well, then I became president of that in, I don't know, a few years after that, probably in the early 70s. And our club, the club went, it was around 30 members at that time. We went up, I went up to 50 members. Presidents after me, we went up to 80 members.
Wow.
But this is during that boom period, another boom period.
Is this the one in the late 70s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the boom period. We grew it up to 80 members
Wow.
at that time.
Okay.
So,
the town was growing, the club was
and in the
growing.
meantime, I've been president, I think. I never wanted to do that. Never wanted to. We always had a new president. And it got so we couldn't get anybody to go. I became the first president to break that deal. And so, and I've been president, I think, 4 times since.
Wow.
And the club's gotten smaller.
Right.
Younger people do not join organizations. They don't volunteer. They don't know what they're missing, tell the truth.
Right.
Yeah, in life. You know, it's but I've always done that. Now, let's go back in the, I think it was 60s, JC, but no, yeah, it was in the 60s. Bob Sweeney became mayor of Craig. Bob Sweeney needed to appoint a new board, so he called me and asked me if I would be in charge of the Board of Appeals. Anyway, the Board of Appeals basically was a board of the building department. That's what it was in charge of.
Right.
So I said, yeah. The last members have all dropped out, got mad, dropped and everything. So I had to start from beginning. Well, being in the construction business, I found there was a lot of faults that we were doing with, our code book was about 1/4 of an inch thick. And I had been studying the uniform building codes a little bit and got interested into them, and I found that there was a lot of things covered that I felt was wrong.
Right.
Now, see, in college, my degree was industrial arts.
Oh, okay.
So I was becoming an industrial arts major and not particularly teaching. We went more into the industry area. So I had quite a background on that already. And in architecture drawing and stuff. So anyway, I ended up on this, and I got the city of Craig at that time to adopt the uniform building codes. We were the first community in the state of Colorado to adopt those codes. And that all developed from because I had been working with the Colorado Plumbing Board that we had to call Denver to get our inspections and get somebody over here, and it was just impossible to get anybody.
Right.
And the state plumbing inspector had told me, he says, you're going to have to develop your own inspection department. I said, okay. I said, we will. And so after I got the city to adopt the code, I said, now we need a building department.
Right.
So I said, we gotta get that going. And so I got a board formed, and they passed that ruling. And then I said, now we need a building inspector. My first inspector was a preacher, and he worked part-time. He didn't know anything about construction, I found out. So anyway, that was kind of a growing period. And I was on that board for 30 years.
Wow. And
it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And we had a lot of pains, and so anyway. And I'd say that I've always volunteered, and I stay with it. I don't drop. I'm not out to better myself to go as a stepping stone. I don't believe in that, so anyway, so I did that, and we got quite a building department. I was chairman of that board for quite a few years.
Right.
And then I turned it over to other people, and we grew. We developed our own building department. We developed licensing.
Okay.
And the state of Colorado was quite interested in what we had done.
Right.
And the funny thing about it is I've called Denver, I called Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, asked them for help. How do you do this? And it was almost a secret. They didn't want to allow that out. And during the power plant building, there was an engineer on there, and I can't remember his name. He says, but he was an engineer originally for Cheyenne, Wyoming. He says, I will help you. And so he got all the information, and we kind of based ourselves after Cheyenne, Wyoming's board and formed. And we were one of the first small communities in Colorado to get that done. And then people started following after us.
Right.
Denver and Colorado Springs, they all had their stuff, and they didn't want to talk to us,
Right.
because they were kind of closed.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were happy to get it started and show people
Yeah.
on how to do it.
Yeah.
And I was off the board, and then I was back on a few years later.
Right.
So anyway, a total of 30 years.
Right.
So anyway, in the 70s, let's see, 30 years ago, that'd be 80s, wouldn't it? 30. There was a community corrections board, or a community corrections established here.
Okay.
Nobody knew what it was about. I got curious what it was. It was only about a half a block from my house, and I was wondering what was going on. So I went and investigated, and I ended up on the board.
Oh.
I'm still on the board,
Really?
and I'm at 29 years, I think, now,
Wow.
in community corrections.
Right.
And that is something that started off with like 15. Now we got 40, about 45.
Oh, okay.
They're called clients.
Right. And what would you do with that?
Well, our responsibility is to protect the community,
Okay.
but meaning that we go through every client, which is every prisoner, and they become clients. We go through every one of their files and see if we want to accept them or not. And we're very, very selective. The state of Colorado doesn't like how we do that, but that's what we are. They would like to change that.
Right.
They'd like to send us more criminal type people here. No. So anyway, I have been on that board, and I told them, I said, this is the last time I'm going to do it. So because I will be 80, I think I'll be 85 when I get off of it or something.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
3-year term.
So you maintained...
No, I'll be 84, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've maintained a very busy life throughout your time here in Craig. What would you do on your downtime to relax?
Relax?
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of us guys would go fishing.
Fishing?
Yeah. And we'd go some ungodly spot. We had to use a 4-wheel drive. But in the meantime, my fun was these activities.
Right, right.
The JCs. We started running river trips down the Yampa Canyon.
And there were a lot of you involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of us. We'd run 4 big boats, big pontoons.
Wow.
No, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 of them. big pontoons. And Larry Cook Chevy, we had to go to Vernal when we bought these boats.
Right.
They were 33 foot long. They were pontoons that were used during World War II, for they had put them down and bridges be built across them.
Right.
And that's what they were.
Okay.
And they would come down to 28 feet, so, and involved in that. Very active, always busy.
Yeah,
so, and I joined the Elks at that time, one time.
The Elk Lodge?
Yeah. But I never got really active in the Elk.
Okay.
I was too busy otherwise.
Yeah, I see that.
But Craig has always been a good community.
Mm-hmm.
And this last deal in business, it's one of the worst years of business we've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But right now our business is growing.
Oh, it's growing again?
Growing again.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like owning, you said your brother and you took ownership of your father's business in 1964?
Yeah.
What was it like owning the business through that big boom and kind of the ups and downs sense?
Well,
being a business owner in Craig.
Okay, my brother Jim and my brother Bob both were in World War II.
Okay.
John and I were in Korea War. Anyway, they had come back and they had gone to work with Dad after World War II. And so Jim and Bob knew how to run the business pretty much.
Right.
Bob was more the plumber, Jim was a sheet metal person, and Dad was still running the business. But in the meantime, he was kind of moving it over to his sons.
Right.
And then I didn't come into it in 1956. But as I had worked the business through high school and back and forth, so anyway, when I came out and I said, well, it was quite busy, we went out, we built a high school at Kremlin. We built part of the hospital. We built a motel.
Oh, okay.
During that period I worked. That's when I was in college.
Right.
Working up there. In fact, I make enough money in the summer months to pay my tuition and living room board in the summer months.
So you're very busy.
Yeah. We were working 12-hour days.
Wow.
And
but there was enough projects to
there was nothing to do.
Oh.
But work.
Right.
So anyway, then, and at the same time, we were pretty busy here with the shop too.
Right.
So.
And but that's what I'm saying. There was enough work needed that you could continually work. That's how fast Craig was growing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We never. It's interesting. My dad, when I was still in high school, he had 4 ditch diggers because mechanical machines had not been developed yet, really. And so he had 4 there. He had himself and another plumber, and he had a tinner and another guy, Hunter. That's 8 people in that business in a 25 by 30 building. So I wasn't allowed to go to work until I was 16.
Okay.
So anyway, the first thing I had to do is go out and dig ditches with the ditch diggers.
Right.
Learn the business. And when they dug a ditch, it would be about a week on that ditch for ditch diggers. Well, when I came along, mechanical equipment was just coming into the picture. And they had a machine which called a band, the kind of forerunner of the backhoe.
Okay.
But all they could do was this, just a straight arc.
Oh, okay.
Just a straight arc.
Right.
And so anyway, the bottom of the ditch looked like this. So anyway, I was sent out with one of the professional ditch diggers. His name was Art Morrison. And Art was had a hair lip, and he so anyway, I was sent out there, and I got watching this machine, and we had to dig out these big centers, you know, that were left.
Right.
And so I got watching him, and I thought, well, if he had only moved 5 feet instead of 10 feet, that would cut that pile down in half. So I had him only move 5 feet, and then I got watching. Well, I said, let's only move 2.5 feet. And he did, and that brought that pile from here down to here, you know. And pretty soon that ditch old man, Morrison, he come at me and he said, you goddamn kid, you're going to take my job away from me. And I says, no, Art, I'm not taking your job. I'm just making your job easier.
Right.
And I says, and we'll accomplish more doing this. Instead of taking a week to dig that ditch, we dug it in one day, we put the pipe in it, and we backfilled it.
Wow.
The same day.
Wow.
And Dad ended up firing 3 other ditch diggers. So after that, that's what we did. And these are the things that I always thought, how can we make it better?
Right.
So it's been my life.
Right.
Yeah. And I've always educated
Others,
yeah.
Right.
I wasn't one of these that kept it as a trade secret.
Right.
It was to get the job done.
Right.
Let's improve it. So,
It's very interesting.
and the cooling right here is part of it. See.
Right.
Oh.
So,
Now, Craig, this was the main street.
Yampa.
Yes. And Saturday night, you could come down and this street would be completely full of cars.
Oh.
And families would come down here and park, and they would get out of their cars and walk up and down the street and talk to each other.
Oh.
And they knew where their kids were.
Right.
The kids might be cruising the street, but they knew where they were.
Mm-hmm.
The drugstore, we had 4 drugstores.
Mm-hmm.
They all had soda fountains. 1, 2, 3. 3 drugstores, and then there was another ice cream parlor.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, so they all did a good business, and by 10 o'clock, everybody kind of folded up and went home. There was no TV
Right.
in Crane. Had a radio, and the radio only picked up KOA from Denver. About that time, and I think it was in the 50s, KRAI radio had started here. I think it was about that time. Yeah. So, anyway, that was entertaining, but no television.
Right.
So, Craig was a very friendly community.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we, in sports and everything, we would communicate back and forth with these schools. We had a good time.
Right.
Today, they're like enemies. Back then, you went and did a football game, and then you partied at a dance afterwards. And,
Right.
and so you get to know the kids in other schools.
Mm-hmm. It's not like that today.
No, it isn't that way, and it shouldn't be that way. They should find out what the others are like.
Right.
So I ended up dating girls at Steamboat. So, anyway, you could ride down here now. You might see 1 car on the street. Where are they? They're at home watching the boob tube,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's happened to our communities. We've stopped socializing. So.
And you're seeing that in Craig.
Yeah. Oh yeah, very definitely. And you know, the bars even don't do the business they used
Right.
to. Because DUIs and things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where basically the community was here. You could buy in Craig, if you wanted to look for it, anything you wanted. Today, yeah. If you wanted a suit, you could buy it in Craig. If you wanted a pair of Levi's, you bought it in Craig. So, shoes, same way. Today, you really have a hard time finding all that stuff. If you wanted if you needed a piece of hardware, you didn't find it one place, somebody else had it.
Right.
And that's the way our business was. There was 3 plumbing shops basically at that time. And we could work between 3 of us and find the item that we needed if we got into a desperate problem.
Right.
So, and in between the hardwares, we could do it. So, Craig was a very viable community.
Right. And it's changing.
Yeah. Yeah, we depend on miners, and we depend on those paychecks and stuff, so.
Right. I've heard that from a couple other people in these interviews that the community population seems to be declining again. Have you seen that, experienced that?
Well, a good indicator is your school system.
Right.
Yeah. And I have a daughter that's a teacher here. I have a son that's a fireman up in Port Orchard, Washington. Another son in general contractor in Sacramento, California. And so we kind of talked and everything, but yeah, we've had a little drop in students, but I think we're going to see an increase again.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a good indicator.
Yeah.
But we have too many kids that are dropouts. That is a bad indicator. When I graduated, kids didn't drop out. If you made it to 8th grade, that's when you did it. You know, you only had to go to the 8th. And I can remember we had 40 kids approximately in our class. We got through the 8th grade, 20 of them disappeared. But the country kids came in and we got our 20 kids back. So we still maintained 40.
Right.
But, and you didn't have dropouts then. And you were expected to go to school.
Right.
But one of the things that we do not do, we do not flunk kids. And we need to flunk kids. Not all of them are the same. Nobody can say, no kid left behind. Baloney. We're going to have to leave them behind. Because if they don't function and can't function, why hold the rest back? And that was my feeling. I told superintendents this. Oh, we can't do that. It hurts their self-esteem. I says, it's a hell of a lot better to do it then than when I have to fire them because they don't know anything. And I says, you guys are not doing your job. You're not educating. And I says, we're getting left behind in the United States. We're getting really left behind. Chinese and Japanese are going all around us. Europe does a better job. So, Europe, they take and kind of take you about the 8th grade and split you here and here, you know.
Right.
We push them on, oh, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to college. No, they don't need to. 15% need to go to college. And so we've got like 30% or more go, and they don't make it past the first year. They can't afford it.
Right.
So that's my feelings about and what's happened to Craig. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Think you got enough?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.